The stone floor bit into Alara's knees as she pressed her forehead lower, her breath coming in shallow gasps that misted in the cold air of the ceremonial hall. All around her, hundreds of pack members knelt in perfect rows, their heads bowed in reverence, but Alara could feel their eyes on her back like burning brands. She didn't belong here. She shouldn't be here at all. Lower, Beta Corvus hissed from somewhere behind her, his voice dripping with contempt. And Omega kneels properly before her Luna. Alara's fingers curled against the marble, her wolf whimpering inside her chest. The silver shackles around her wrists seemed to tighten, burning against her skin with that particular agony that only silver could bring to their kind. They'd put them on her 3 hours ago when they'd dragged her from the servant quarters and thrown her into the hall with the rest of the pack. No explanation, no mercy. The great doors at the far end of the hall swung open with a thunderous boom, and the scent of jasmine and power flooded the space. Ilara's wolf recoiled instantly, pressing itself small and frightened against her ribs. She recognized that scent. Everyone in the Silvercrest pack recognized it now. Seraphina Ashwood, soon to be Seraphina Thornwood, the new Luna of their pack. "Rise and behold your Luna!" Corvus's voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling, and the sound of hundreds of bodies moving in unison filled the hall. But Alara stayed down, her knees locked in place, her head bowed. Omegas didn't rise until they were told. Omegas especially didn't rise when they'd been placed in silver. Footsteps clicked across the marble, each one precise and deliberate. The jasmine scent grew stronger, sickeningly sweet, making Alara's stomach turn. Her wolf snarled silently, which made no sense. Her wolf never snarled. Her wolf was small and weak and did what it was told, just like Alara herself. "I said rise," Corvus snapped, and Alara felt his hand close around her upper arm, yanking her upward with enough force to make her stumble. The shackles bit deeper, drawing blood that trickled hot down her wrists. She kept her eyes down, fixed on the hem of her worn gray dress, the uniform of the lowest servants. "Look at me." The command came from directly in front of her, and it wasn't Corvus's voice. It was feminine, cultured, and laced with an authority that made Alara's bones ache. She had no choice but to obey. Her eyes lifted slowly, traveling up the white silk gown that seemed to glow in the morning light, streaming through the stained glass windows, past the delicate hands adorned with rings of gold and moonstone, until finally landing on Seraphina's face. She was beautiful. Everyone said so. Hair like spun gold, eyes the color of amber, features so perfect they seemed carved by the moon goddess herself. But there was something else in those eyes as they fixed on Alara, something cold and calculating that made Alara's blood run ice. "This is the Omega?" Seraphina asked, not taking her gaze from Ilara's face. "Yes, Luna," Corvus replied, the title coming easily even though the ceremony hadn't yet taken place. Ilara Whitmore, orphaned at 12. No family, no rank, no prospects. She's been in the kitchens for the past 6 years. "How old are you?" Seraphina asked, her head tilting slightly, like a predator examining prey. 21, my Luna," Ilara whispered, her voice barely audible. 21. Seraphina's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "And you've never shifted in the presence of the pack, have you? Never participated in a hunt? Never taken a mate? Never even attended a gathering?" It wasn't a question, but Alara nodded anyway, confusion mixing with the fear in her chest. Why was the future Luna asking her these things? What did any of this matter? "Do you know why you're here, Alara Whitmore?" Seraphina's voice dropped lower, intimate almost, like they were sharing secrets. "No, my Luna, because I wanted you here." Seraphina reached out, and her fingers closed around Alara's chin, tilting her face up further into the light. Alara flinched but didn't dare pull away. "I wanted everyone to see you. I wanted my mate to see you." The doors boomed open again, and the scent that rushed in made Ilara's entire world stop. Pine and midnight, thunder and stone, ancient power that made the air itself bow in submission. Alpha Kale Thornwood had arrived. Alara's wolf, which had been cowering and whimpering moments before, suddenly surged forward with a violence that stole Alara's breath. She felt her eyes flash gold, felt her canines lengthen, felt every nerve in her body come alive with a recognition so profound it was like being struck by lightning. No, no, this couldn't be happening. This wasn't possible. Mate! Her wolf howled inside her mind, the sound triumphant and desperate and absolutely certain. Mate! 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 Aurora slammed every wall she had into place, forcing her wolf down with a brutality she'd never had to use before. Her eyes returned to their normal pale green, her canines retracted. But she could feel herself shaking, could feel sweat breaking out across her skin despite the cold. She kept her gaze down, locked on the marble floor, praying to the moon goddess that no one had noticed those 2 seconds where her control had slipped. My love. Seraphina's voice was warm honey as she released Alara's chin and turned toward the approaching footsteps. I was just acquainting myself with your pack. They're all so devoted. Aurora didn't look up. She couldn't look up. If she looked at him, if she met those eyes she'd only ever glimpsed from across crowded rooms or through kitchen windows, she would shatter into pieces. Seraphina. His voice was exactly as she'd always heard it. Deep and commanding, the kind of voice that made lesser wolves drop to their knees in submission. The ceremony begins in an hour. Why is there an omega in silver? Oh, her? Seraphina laughed, the sound light and careless. I'll explain everything during the binding. It's all part of the ceremony I planned. You'll see. Silence stretched between them, heavy with something Aurora couldn't name. She could feel his presence like a physical thing, like standing too close to a bonfire. Her wolf was throwing itself against her mental barriers, screaming and clawing to be let out, to run to him, to claim what was theirs. But he wasn't theirs. He was Seraphina's. The engagement had been announced 3 months ago, a political alliance between 2 of the most powerful packs in the Northern Territories. The Silvercrest Pack and the Ashwood Pack, united through the bond of their leaders. It had been the only thing anyone could talk about for weeks. Remove the silver, Kale said, and Alara's heart lurched. My love, I really think. Remove it. Now. The command was absolute, leaving no room for argument. Corvus moved quickly, pulling a key from his pocket and unlocking the shackles with hands that trembled slightly. The moment the silver fell away, Aurora felt the burns begin to heal, her wolf's power trickling back into her veins. But she kept herself small, kept herself still, even as relief flooded through her. Thank you, Alpha, she whispered, still not looking up. Look at me. Everything in Aurora screamed at her to disobey, to keep her eyes down, to protect the secret that was burning in her chest like a second sun. But an Alpha's direct command wasn't something an Omega could refuse. Her body moved of its own accord, her head lifting, her eyes rising until they met his. Time stopped. Kyle Thornwood stood 6.5 feet tall. Built like violence and power had been poured into human form. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes the color of storm clouds that seemed to see straight through skin and bone into soul. He was everything the stories said and more, terrifying and magnificent in equal measure. And the moment their eyes met, Aurora saw his entire body go rigid. His nostrils flared, his eyes flashed gold, his hands curled into fists at his sides, and the air around him began to shimmer with barely controlled power. Every wolf in the hall felt it, that sudden spike of alpha dominance that made them all duck their heads instinctively. But his eyes never left Alara's face, and she could see the recognition there, could see the moment the mate bond snapped into place on his end with the force of a thunderclap. Kale? Seraphina's voice held a note of uncertainty now. Darling, what's wrong? He didn't answer. Couldn't answer, maybe. He just stared at Alara, and she stared back, and between them the bond pulled taut, singing with a certainty that could not be denied or hidden or explained away. Well, Seraphina said, and her voice had gone cold as winter ice. I see you've noticed our little complication. Kael's head snapped toward his fiancée, his eyes still gold, his wolf clearly riding him hard. What are you talking about? Seraphina's smile was razor sharp. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't investigate when you started having dreams 3 months ago? When you started waking up, calling a name you'd never heard before? When you began spending hours staring out windows toward the servant quarters? Elara's blood turned to ice in her veins. I had her followed, Serafina continued, circling around Aurora like a shark around prey. Had her watched. Had my people dig into every moment of her pathetic little life. And do you know what I found? Stop, Kael growled, the sound reverberating through the hall. I found that she's been here the whole time. 6 years. Right under your nose. Hiding in the kitchens. Keeping herself small and invisible. 6 years of you two being in the same pack territory, and the mate bond didn't snap into place because she never let herself be seen by you. Never attended gatherings. Never participated in runs. Always kept her scent dampened with those little herbs the Omegas use. Alara couldn't breathe. Her vision was starting to tunnel, black creeping in at the edges. This couldn't be happening. She'd been so careful. But here's the truly fascinating part, Serafina said, stopping directly behind Alara and placing both hands on her shoulders. Alara flinched at the touch, at the proprietary way those fingers dug into her skin. She knew. She's known for months, maybe longer. She recognized you, didn't she, little Omega? Recognized her mate and decided to hide from him. Is this true? Kael's voice was barely human now. His wolf so close to the surface that Alara could feel its power pressing against her skin. Alara opened her mouth, but no words came out. What could she say? Yes, she'd known. She'd figured it out 6 months ago when she'd accidentally stumbled into the Alpha's path while carrying laundry, and he'd frozen mid-conversation, his head swinging toward her like a lodestone finding north. She'd run, hidden, done everything she could to make sure it never happened again. Because Omegas didn't get alpha mates. Because she had nothing to offer a wolf like him. Because political alliances mattered more than moon goddess bonds in packs like Silvercrest. Because she'd watched her mother reject her true mate for a chosen mate of higher rank, and she'd seen how it had destroyed them both. Answer your alpha, Corvus barked. Yes, Alara whispered. I knew. The sound Kael made was barely a word, more like a wounded animal's cry. Why? Because she's smart, Serafina answered for her, her fingers tightening on Alara's shoulders. Because she knew exactly what her presence would do. Knew that the mate bond would complicate the alliance between our packs. Knew that her pathetic Omega status would be an embarrassment to you. So she hid, like the coward she is. Let her go, Kael said, his voice dropping to a tone so dangerous that several pack members near the back of the hall began edging toward the exits. Oh, I don't think so. Serafina's hand slid down to grip Alara's wrists, pulling them behind her back. You see, I have a solution to our little problem, one that will satisfy everyone. There is no problem, Kael snarled, taking a step forward. She's my mate. The ceremony is cancelled. The alliance will proceed exactly as planned, Serafina interrupted, her voice ringing with absolute certainty. Because this Omega is going to reject you, publicly, during the Luna ceremony, in front of both packs. The hall erupted into chaos. Voices rose in shock and confusion, pack members turning to each other with expressions of disbelief. Corvus was shouting something about tradition and law. But Alara heard none of it, over the sound of her wolf howling in anguish, over the feeling of the mate bond writhing in her chest like a living thing in pain. I won't, Alara said, the words escaping before she could stop them. I won't do that. Serafina's laugh was cruel. Oh, little Omega, you don't have a choice. She leaned in close, her lips nearly brushing Alara's ear. Because if you don't reject him, if you don't stand up in front of everyone and sever the mate bond cleanly and completely, I will make sure that the 47 Omegas currently living in the servant quarters suffer for your selfishness. Starting with little Maya. She's what, 7 years old? I hear she's very attached to you. Thinks of you as a big sister. Elara's knees nearly gave out. Maya. Sweet Maya, with her gap-toothed smile and her tendency to leave wildflowers on Alara's pillow. Maya, who'd lost both parents in a rogue attack last year and had nightmares every night until Alara started sleeping on the floor next to her bed. You wouldn't, Alara breathed. Try me. Serafina's voice was pleasant, conversational. Reject him during the ceremony, or I will make their lives a living hell. I'll have Corvus move them to the Northern Territory, away from anything familiar, away from you. I'll make sure they're worked until they collapse. Enough! Kale's roar shook the windows, sent several of the weaker wolves to their knees. You will not threaten members of my pack. You will not— Your pack? Serafina released Alara and turned to face Kael, her expression shifting to something almost pitying. Darling, half of the wolves in this room are mine now. The alliance papers were signed 3 days ago. My father and your beta witnessed it. If this bonding doesn't happen, if you reject me for some servant girl, the Ashwood Pack will withdraw all support. Your border patrols, your trade agreements, your defense treaties, all of it. Gone. And then what happens when the Blackwater Pack realizes you're vulnerable? When they come for your territory the way they've been threatening to for the past 5 years? Kael stood frozen, his jaw clenched so tight Alara could see the muscles jumping. His eyes found hers across the space separating them, and in them she saw rage and grief and helplessness all at once. He was trapped. They both were. The ceremony begins in 1 hour, Serafina announced to the hall, her voice clear and commanding, and it will proceed exactly as planned. The Omega will kneel before her Luna and reject her false mate bond. And then we will all move forward as we should have from the beginning. She turned on her heel and swept from the hall, her white gown trailing behind her like a flag of victory. Most of the pack members followed, filing out in silence, not meeting anyone's eyes. Within minutes, only a handful remained. Corvus, a few senior warriors, and Kael, still standing in the center of the hall like a statue carved from stone. Alara, he said, and his voice cracked on her name. Don't, she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. Please don't. I won't let her hurt you. I won't let her hurt any of them. You can't stop her. Alara finally looked at him properly, really looked, and felt her heart break at what she saw in his face. She's right. The alliance matters. The pack matters. You're my mate, he interrupted fiercely, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. He stopped just short of touching her, his hands hovering in the air like he was afraid she might shatter. You're mine. Do you understand that? Mine. The possessiveness in his tone sent shivers down her spine, made her wolf purr despite everything. But it changed nothing. I have to reject you, she said, forcing the words past the lump in her throat. For Maya, for the others, for the pack. There has to be another way. There isn't. Alara stepped back, putting distance between them before she did something stupid like reach for him. I'll do it during the ceremony. I'll make it clean, and then you'll be free to bond with her and keep the alliance and protect everyone. I don't want to be free, Kael said, and the raw pain in his voice made her eyes burn with tears she refused to shed. I want you. Sometimes we don't get what we want. Alara turned away, unable to look at him anymore. Sometimes we have to do what's right instead. She walked toward the doors, her legs shaking, her whole body screaming at her to turn back, to run to him, to let him fix this somehow. But she knew there was no fixing this. There was only surviving it. Alara. She paused at the threshold, not looking back. I will find a way, Kael said, and it sounded like a vow. I swear to you, I will find a way out of this. But Alara knew better than to believe in promises. She'd learned that lesson a long time ago. The hour passed in a blur of numbness and terror. The servant Omegas helped her bathe and dress in ceremonial robes white, like a sacrifice, which felt horribly appropriate. Maya clung to her legs the whole time, crying softly, somehow understanding that something terrible was about to happen even if she didn't know the details. It's going to be okay, Alara lied, running her fingers through the little girl's dark curls. I promise, sweetheart, it's all going to be okay. But it wasn't going to be okay. Nothing was ever going to be okay again. The Luna ceremony was held in the great courtyard under the open sky, the ancient stone circle that had witnessed 1,000 such rituals over the centuries. Both packs had gathered the Silvercrest wolves on one side, the Ashwood wolves on the other, hundreds of them filling every available space. At the center of the circle stood Kale, dressed in the ceremonial black of an alpha, and Seraphina beside him in that white gown, a crown of silver and moonstone already resting on her golden hair. Elara was led to a spot at the edge of the circle, still in her white robes, barefoot on the cold stone. Corvus stood behind her like a guard, ensuring she didn't try to run. As if she could. As if her wolf wasn't already dying inside her chest, curling up small and broken in preparation for what was coming. Elder Thorn, the eldest wolf in the pack, stepped forward with the ceremonial chalice and blade. His voice rang out across the courtyard, reciting the ancient words of the Luna bonding, words that should have filled Elara with joy but instead felt like stones being piled on her grave. "Before we complete this sacred bond," Elder Thorn said, his rheumy eyes finding Elara in the crowd, "there is one who must speak, one who has a claim that must be severed before this alpha can bind himself to his chosen Luna." This wasn't traditional. This wasn't part of any Luna ceremony Elara had ever heard of. But she understood what was happening. Seraphina was making a spectacle of it, making sure everyone witnessed the Omega reject her alpha mate, making sure there could be no doubt, no question, no possibility of challenge later. "Come forward, Elara Whitmore," Elder Thorn commanded. Elara's feet moved against her will, carrying her into the center of the circle. She kept her eyes down, focused on the intricate patterns carved into the stone beneath her bare feet. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, could hear the whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. "Is it true that you are the mate of Alpha Kale Thornwood?" Elder Thorn asked. "Yes," Elara whispered. "Speak up, Omega," Seraphina said coldly. "Let them all hear you." "Yes," Elara said louder, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "It's true." The whispers grew louder, shock and disbelief rippling through both packs. Elara could feel Kale's eyes burning into her, but she didn't look at him. She couldn't. "And do you wish to accept this bond?" Elder Thorn continued. "To claim your place as the Alpha's true mate?" This was it. This was the moment. All she had to do was say one word: yes. Just yes. And the bond would solidify, become unbreakable, and damn all the consequences. Damn the alliance. Damn the politics. Damn everything but the feeling of rightness that sang through her veins whenever she was near him. But Maya's face flashed in her mind. Sweet Maya with her missing front tooth and her endless questions. And behind her, the faces of all the other Omegas who depended on Elara to protect them, to keep them safe, to put their needs above her own wants. Elara's voice broke. She closed her eyes, gathered every scrap of strength she had left, and opened them again. "I reject." The words died in her throat as pain exploded through her skull. She stumbled, her hand flying to her temple, stars bursting behind her eyes. What was happening? This wasn't right. This wasn't how rejection was supposed to feel. The pain was supposed to come after, not during. Not like this sharp and sudden and wrong. "Elara?" Kale's voice. Alarmed, moving toward her. But Elara wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at Seraphina, at the crown on her head that was glowing. Actually glowing, with a silver light that grew brighter and brighter until Elara had to squint against it. "What did you do?" Seraphina hissed, her hand flying to the crown. "What are you doing?" "Nothing," Elara gasped, falling to her knees as another wave of pain crashed through her. "I'm not doing anything." The crown lifted. It simply lifted off Seraphina's head, rising into the air on currents of silver light, spinning slowly as if caught in an invisible wind. The entire courtyard fell silent. Every wolf frozen in place, watching as the impossible happened right before their eyes. "No," Seraphina breathed, backing away, her face pale. "No, this isn't possible. She's an Omega. She can't—" The crown moved. It drifted through the air like a leaf on water, floating over Kale's head without pausing, past Elder Thorn's shocked face, directly toward where Elara knelt on the cold stone. She looked up at it, this ancient thing that had crowned every Luna of the Silver Crest pack for 500 years, and felt her wolf surge forward with a power she'd never felt before. The crown settled on her head, and the world exploded into light. Power rushed through her like a flood, like every door in her soul that had been locked and barred suddenly bursting open all at once. Her wolf, which had always been small and weak and frightened, unfurled to its full size, and it was magnificent. It was enormous. It was Alpha. Alara threw her head back and howled, and the sound that came from her throat wasn't the meek cry of an Omega, but the commanding call of a born Luna. Around the courtyard, wolves began dropping to their knees, bowing their heads in submission to a power they couldn't resist. Even the Ashwood pack wolves, who owed her no allegiance, felt the pull of it. When the light finally faded, Alara remained kneeling in the center of the circle, the Luna crown gleaming on her head, her eyes blazing gold, her whole body thrumming with power that felt both foreign and absolutely right. "Impossible," Elder Thorn whispered, but his eyes were shining with something like wonder. "The crown has chosen. The moon goddess herself has chosen. She's an Omega," Seraphina shrieked, her composure finally cracking. "She can't be Luna. She has no rank, no family, no power." "She has the only power that matters," Kael said, and Alara finally looked at him, finally met those storm-gray eyes. He was smiling, wide and fierce and triumphant, as he crossed the circle to where she knelt. "She has the blessing of the moon goddess. She is my true mate, and she is your Luna." He dropped to one knee in front of her, taking her hand in his touch sending sparks of electricity racing up her arm. The mate bond, which had been pulled taut with tension and pain, suddenly settled into place with a rightness that made her gasp. "I, Kael Thornwood, Alpha of the Silvercrest Pack, accept you, Alara Whitmore, as my mate and my Luna," he said, the formal words ringing across the silent courtyard. "I claim you before the moon goddess and before our pack. I will protect you, honor you, and stand beside you for all my days." Tears streamed down Alara's face, but she was smiling, actually smiling, as she answered with the traditional words. "I, Alara Whitmore, accept you, Kael Thornwood, as my mate and my Alpha. I claim you before the moon goddess and before our pack. I will stand beside you, support you, and love you for all my days." The bond snapped into place fully, completely, irrevocably, and the feeling of it was like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Alara felt Kael's emotions as if they were her own, the joy, the relief, the fierce, possessive pride. And underneath it all, a love so deep and immediate and absolute that it stole her breath. "No!" Seraphina lunged forward, but Corvus caught her arm, holding her back. "This isn't over. The Alliance, my father, will never accept this." "Your father will accept what the moon goddess has decreed," Elder Thorn said calmly, and there was steel beneath his elderly voice now. "The crown has chosen. The bond is complete. Alara Whitmore is Luna of the Silvercrest Pack, and anyone who challenges that challenges the will of the goddess herself." Around the courtyard, wolves were rising to their feet, and one by one, they began to howl Silvercrest and Ashwood alike, their voices rising in a song of acceptance and celebration. Even Seraphina's own pack members were bowing to the inevitable, to the undeniable truth of what they'd all just witnessed. Kael pulled Alara to her feet, and before she could speak, before she could think, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was claiming and possessive and full of all the hunger that had been building between them since the moment their eyes first met. Alara melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with equal desperation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "Mine," he growled softly, just for her ears. "My mate, my Luna, mine." "Yours," Alara agreed, and felt her wolf purr in contentment. "Always yours." "I have so many questions," Kael murmured, a hint of humor creeping into his voice. "Starting with how an Omega has alpha power, and why the moon goddess waited until the most dramatic possible moment to reveal it." Alara laughed, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she'd laughed? "I don't have those answers. I don't understand any of this." "Then we'll figure it out together," He pulled back just enough to look at her properly, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. But first, we need to deal with our former guest. Elara turned to see Corvus and two warriors escorting Seraphina from the courtyard. The former Luna candidate was still protesting, still threatening, but no one was listening anymore. Her power here was broken, her schemes undone by forces beyond any of their control. What about the Alliance? Elara asked, worry creeping back in despite everything. What about the Ashwood Pack? Look, Kyle said, directing her attention to a tall man with silver streaks in his dark hair who was making his way through the crowd. That's Aldrich Ashwood, Seraphina's father and alpha of the Ashwood Pack. Elara tensed, preparing for anger or demands, but when Aldrich reached them, he simply bowed his head in a gesture of respect. Luna, Elara, Alpha Kale. The moon goddess has spoken clearly today, and I am not fool enough to question her wisdom. The Ashwood Pack will honor the alliance with Silvercrest, regardless of which Luna stands beside their alpha. You're saying, Elara started. I'm saying the alliance was always about our packs standing together against common threats, not about my daughter's ambitions. Aldrich's expression was grim, but honest. Seraphina orchestrated much of what happened here without my knowledge or consent. The threats she made, the manipulations, those were hers alone. I apologize for the harm she has caused, and I hope we can move forward in good faith. Kale's arm tightened around Elara's waist. The Silvercrest Pack accepts your apology and your continued alliance, Alpha Aldrich. Let us begin again on better terms. The two alphas clasped arms, sealing the agreement, and Elara felt another weight lift from her shoulders. It was really over. Seraphina's plans had failed. The alliance would hold, and she was standing here, wearing the Luna crown, with her mate's arm around her and her wolf finally, at peace. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of introductions and celebrations. Pack members who'd never spoken to her before were suddenly bowing and offering congratulations. The kitchen staff where she'd worked for 6 years were crying and laughing in equal measure, thrilled that one of their own had risen so high. And through it all, Kyle never left her side, his presence a steady anchor as her entire world transformed around her. But there was one person Elara needed to find, one face she needed to see. As the sun began to set and the celebration moved into the great hall for the feast, she slipped away from the crowd, Kyle following without question, understanding somehow what she needed. She found Maya in the servant quarters, curled up on Elara's old bed, her face buried in the pillow. The little girl looked up when they entered, her eyes red from crying, and for a moment she just stared at Elara with the crown on her head and the fine ceremonial robes replacing her servant's dress. Elara? Maya whispered. Are you really Luna now? Elara knelt down, heedless of the expensive fabric, and opened her arms. Maya launched herself into them, hugging Elara so tight it hurt. I am, Elara said softly, stroking the child's hair. But that doesn't change anything between us, sweetheart. I'm still your Elara. I still love you. And no one is ever going to hurt you or send you away or make your life difficult. I promise. The scary lady said she would, Maya mumbled against Elara's shoulder. If you didn't do what she wanted, the scary lady is gone now, Kyle said, and his voice was gentle in a way Elara hadn't heard before. He crouched down beside them, putting himself at Maya's level. And I promise you, little one, no one will ever threaten you again. You're under the Luna's protection now. That means you're family. Maya pulled back slightly, looking between them with wide eyes. Really? Really, Elara confirmed. In fact, I was thinking, the Luna needs attendants, doesn't she? Young wolves to train and teach? Would you like to be one of them? The transformation in Maya's face was instantaneous, tears replaced by a smile so bright it could have lit the room. Yes, please! Then it settled. Elara kissed her forehead and stood, taking Kale's offered hand. We'll move you to better quarters tomorrow. Tonight, sleep well and dream happy dreams. I will, Maya promised, settling back onto the bed, already looking more peaceful than she had in weeks. As they walked back toward the celebration, Alara found herself leaning into Kael's side, exhaustion finally catching up with her. It had been the longest, most terrifying, most miraculous day of her life. "Are you all right?" Kael asked softly, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "I think so," Alara said honestly. "I still don't understand how this happened. Why the crown chose me. Why I have alpha power when I've always been—" "Maybe you were never really an Omega," Kael interrupted gently. "Maybe you only seemed weak because you were suppressing your true nature to survive. Some wolves don't come into their full power until they're in a situation that forces it out. Or maybe the moon goddess has a twisted sense of humor," Alara suggested, and was rewarded with Kael's laugh, rich and warm. "Maybe both." He stopped walking and turned to face her, his hands coming up to frame her face, careful not to disturb the crown. "But I don't care why or how. I only care that you're here, that you're mine, and that we have the rest of our lives to figure everything else out." "The rest of our lives," Alara repeated, testing out the words. A week ago, she'd thought her life would be nothing but kitchen work and hiding and keeping her head down. Now she was Luna of one of the most powerful packs in the north, mated to an alpha who looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. "Too overwhelming?" Kael asked, concern flickering across his face. "No," Alara said, and meant it. She reached up, covering his hands with hers, feeling the mate bond pulse between them, warm and certain. "Not overwhelming, just new. But I think new might be exactly what I needed." "We both needed it," Kael murmured. And then he was kissing her again. Slower this time, sweeter, a promise of all the tomorrows stretching out before them. From somewhere in the great hall, someone struck up a traditional Luna blessing song, and the sound of hundreds of voices joined together carried out into the night. Alara pulled back from the kiss, listening to her pack because they were her pack, now singing for her, celebrating her, accepting her. "Ready to go back?" Kael asked. "They'll want to formally present you to both packs, and there's still the feast and the dancing and about 100 other traditions we have to get through before this night is over." "Ready," Alara said, squaring her shoulders and lifting her chin. The crown on her head felt lighter now, less like a weight, and more like exactly where it was meant to be. She was Alara Whitmore, orphan and Omega and kitchen servant, who the moon goddess herself had chosen to be Luna. And if the goddess believed in her, if Kael believed in her, then maybe it was time she started believing in herself. They walked back into the great hall together, hand in hand, Alpha and Luna, and the roar of approval that greeted them shook the rafters. This was her life now, her pack, her mate, her purpose. And as Alara looked out over the sea of faces watching her with respect and hope and acceptance, she felt something she'd never really felt before. She felt like she was home. The feast lasted well into the night, and true to Kael's word, there were countless traditions to observe. Alara received the formal oaths of loyalty from every ranked wolf in the pack, each one kneeling before her and pledging their service to their new Luna. She tasted the ceremonial wine, shared the blessing bread, and danced the traditional Luna's spiral with Kael at the center of the hall while everyone watched. But the moment she'd remember most came later, when the formal celebrations had given way to more relaxed festivities and she finally had a chance to step outside for a breath of air. She stood on the balcony overlooking the packlands, the crown still on her head, watching the moon rise full and bright over the forest. Kael found her there, as she'd known he would, drawn by the mate bond that now sang constantly between them. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on the top of her head, careful of the crown. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "Everything," Alara admitted. "This morning I was nobody. Tonight I'm Luna. And I keep waiting to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It's not a dream," Kael assured her. "This is real. You're real. We're real." "I was so scared," Alara whispered. "When Serafina made me kneel in that hall, when she threatened Maya and the others, when I thought I was going to have to reject you, I've never been that scared in my life." "You never have to be that scared again," Kael said fiercely, his arms tightening around her. I will spend every day of the rest of our lives making sure you feel safe and protected and cherished. You're not alone anymore, Alara. You will never be alone again. Promise? The word came out smaller than she meant it to, vulnerable in a way she rarely let herself be. I promise, Kael said, and she could feel the truth of it through the bond, could feel how absolutely he meant it. You're mine, Alara Whitmore. My mate. My Luna. The other half of my soul. And I will love you until the day I die and beyond. Alara turned in his arms, looking up at him, at this powerful alpha who somehow looked at her, nobody, Omega, servant, like she was the most important thing in his world. I love you too, she said, the words feeling both strange and perfect on her tongue. I think I've loved you since the first moment I saw you, even when I was too afraid to admit it. Then we have 6 months to make up for, Kael said with a smile. Starting now. He kissed her again, there on the balcony under the full moon, and Alara kissed him back with her whole heart, letting herself finally believe that this was real, that she deserved this, that the moon goddess had given her the greatest gift she could imagine, a mate who saw her, truly saw her, and loved what he saw. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. So, Luna, he murmured, his voice warm with affection and desire. What's the first decree you want to make? Alara pretended to think about it. Better food in the servant quarters, more days off for the Omegas, and absolutely no more silver shackles on anyone who hasn't actually committed a crime. Done, done, and done, Kael agreed immediately. What else? That's it for tonight, Alara said, smiling. The rest can wait. Right now, I just want to stand here with you and remember that I'm the luckiest woman alive. Second luckiest, Kael corrected gently. I'm the lucky one. I found my mate. I found my Luna. I found the other half of myself that I didn't even know was missing. Then we're both lucky, Alara decided, and leaned up to kiss him once more. Behind them, inside the great hall, the celebration continued, their pack rejoicing in their new Luna and the blessed bond between their alpha and his true mate. But out here under the stars, it was just the two of them, beginning the first night of forever together. And as the Luna crown gleamed silver in the moonlight, and the mate bond pulsed strong and true between them, Alara finally let herself believe in happiness, let herself believe in hope. Let herself believe that sometimes, even for Omegas from the kitchens, fairy tales could come true. She was Luna now. She was loved. She was home. And it was perfect. The first 3 months of Alara's reign, as Luna passed in a blur of learning and growing into her new role. She spent her mornings training with Kael, discovering the full extent of the alpha power that had been dormant inside her for so long, and her afternoons working with the pack members, hearing their concerns, settling disputes, and slowly earning the respect that had been thrust upon her so suddenly. The Omegas who'd once been her fellow servants now looked to her as their champion, and she made sure that every promise she'd made that first night was kept. Better living conditions, fair treatment, voices that were finally heard. But on a cold morning in early winter, everything changed. Alara woke to find Kael already dressed, standing at the window of their chambers with tension radiating from every line of his body. She sat up immediately, the mate bond thrumming with his anxiety. What's wrong? Blackwater Pack crossed our borders last night, Kael said without turning around, his voice tight. They killed 3 of our patrol wolves and left their bodies as a message. Ice flooded Alara's veins. The Blackwater Pack, led by the ruthless Alpha Mordain, had been threatening Silvercrest's territory for years, held back only by the alliance with the Ashwood Pack and Silvercrest's reputation for strength. But apparently, Mordain had decided to test that strength now, when they had a new Luna who'd been an Omega just months ago. What did the message say? Alara asked, climbing out of bed and moving to stand beside him. Kael's jaw clenched. That the Silvercrest Pack has grown weak under the rule of a servant Luna. That Mordain challenges my right to hold this territory. And that if I don't face him in single combat within 3 days, he'll consider it a forfeit and invade with his full force. Single combat, Alara repeated, her stomach churning. To the death? To submission or death? Kyle corrected. But Mordain doesn't accept submission. He never has. Alara's mind raced. She'd heard stories about Alpha Mordain, a massive wolf who'd killed his own father to take control of the Blackwater Pack, who ruled through fear and brutality, who'd been undefeated in single combat for 15 years. And he was challenging Kale now, when Kale had been distracted by the mate bond, by helping Alara adjust to her new role, by the upheaval of the past few months. You can't go, Alara said firmly. It's a trap. He's been planning this, waiting for the right moment when you'd be vulnerable. I don't have a choice, Kyle said, finally turning to look at her. If I refuse, we look weak. Other packs will see it as an invitation to test our borders. And if Mordain invades, we'll lose wolves. Dozens, maybe hundreds. I won't let that happen. Then I'll go with you, Alara said. Luna stands beside Alpha. That's tradition. Absolutely not. Kale's eyes flashed gold. You're staying here where it's safe. I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be protected, Alara argued, her own alpha power rising to meet his. I'm your Luna, your mate, your equal, and I will not sit in this room while you face a monster alone. They stared at each other, both of their wolves bristling, until finally Kale's expression softened. I can't lose you, he said quietly. Alara, if something happened to you because of my pride, nothing will happen to me, Alara interrupted, taking his hands in hers. But something will definitely happen if we show up divided. We're stronger together. We've always been stronger together. Kyle pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. You're too stubborn for your own good. You love that about me, Alara murmured against his chest. I do, he admitted. More than you know. 2 days later, they stood at the border between Silvercrest and Blackwater territory, the neutral ground where the challenge would take place. Both packs had gathered, hundreds of wolves on each side, watching with hungry eyes. Alara stood beside Kale, wearing the Luna crown and a dress of deep forest green that marked her as both royalty and warrior. She could feel the eyes on her, could hear the whispers about the Omega Luna, could sense the doubt rolling off the gathered wolves. Alpha Mordain emerged from the Blackwater side, and Alara's wolf immediately recoiled. He was massive, easily taller and broader than Kale, with scars covering his arms and neck like trophies. His eyes were black as coal, and when he smiled, it was the smile of a predator who'd already tasted victory. Kale Thornwood, Mordain called out, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. I see you brought your pet Omega with you. How touching. Luna Alara stands witness to this challenge, as is her right, Kyle said calmly, though Alara could feel his fury through the bond. Are you prepared to face the consequences of breaking pack law by killing our patrol wolves? They were on my land, Mordain said with a shrug. I was defending my territory, but if you want satisfaction, come and take it. If you can. The challenge was issued. There was no going back now. Kale began to strip off his shirt, preparing for the shift, but Alara's hand closed around his wrist. Through the mate bond, she pushed an image, a feeling, a knowing that had suddenly crystallized in her mind. Kale's eyes widened as he understood what she was suggesting, and for a moment she thought he would refuse. But then he nodded once, sharp and certain. I accept your challenge, Mordain, Kyle called out. But Luna Law grants me the right to have my mate fight beside me. As we are one unit, one force. Do you accept these terms? The clearing erupted into chaos. Wolves from both packs began shouting, some in support, others in protest. This wasn't traditional. This wasn't how alpha challenges worked. But it was within the ancient laws, a provision that was rarely invoked because Lunas were typically chosen mates without alpha power of their own. Mordain's eyes narrowed as he studied Alara, clearly trying to assess whether she was truly a threat or if this was just desperation on Kale's part. You want to hide behind your mate's skirts, Thornwood? Fine. I'll kill you both. Then we're agreed, Kale said, and the formal acceptance sealed the challenge under the new terms. They shifted together, Alara's transformation coming easier now than it ever had before. Her wolf was large and powerful, with fur the color of autumn leaves and those same pale green eyes. Beside her, Kale's wolf was darker, massive, and commanding, his gray eyes intense and focused. And facing them was Mordane's wolf, a monster of black fur and red-stained teeth, easily the largest wolf Alara had ever seen. The fight began with Mordane lunging forward, his speed belying his massive size. But Kael was ready, meeting him head-on while Alara circled to the side. They'd planned this in the seconds before shifting, a strategy that played to their strengths. Kael's power and experience, Alara's agility, and the element of surprise. Mordane's jaws snapped closed where Kael's throat had been a second before, and Alara darted in, her teeth finding purchase on Mordane's flank. She tore away, drawing first blood, and Mordane roared in fury. He spun faster than she'd anticipated, his massive paw catching her across the shoulder and sending her tumbling across the ground. Through the mate bond, she felt Kael's terror and rage, felt him throw himself at Mordane with renewed ferocity. They clashed in a tangle of fur and fangs, and Alara struggled to her feet, her shoulders screaming in protest. But she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. She charged back into the fight, and this time she and Kael moved as one, perfectly synchronized through the bond that connected them. Where Kael attacked high, she attacked low. When he drew Mordane's attention left, she struck from the right. They were two halves of a whole, and Mordane, for all his size and strength and experience, had never faced anything like them. Blood stained the ground, most of it Mordane's, as they drove him back step by step. His movements grew slower, more desperate. And then Alara saw her opening Mordane overextended on an attack aimed at Kael, leaving his throat exposed for just a heartbeat. She took it, her jaws closed around his throat, not to kill but to force submission, her teeth pressing against his windpipe with enough pressure to make her point. Kael immediately positioned himself on Mordane's other side, his own teeth at the back of Mordane's neck, the killing position. Together, they held the Blackwater Alpha immobile, a breath away from death. Mordane struggled for a moment, then went still. The submission was absolute, undeniable. He was defeated. Alara released him and stepped back, shifting to human form, not caring about the blood that covered her or the gasps from the watching wolves as they saw their Luna standing victorious. Kael shifted beside her, his hand immediately finding hers, their fingers intertwining. "The challenge is won," Kael announced, his voice carrying to every wolf present. "Alpha Mordane is defeated. The Blackwater Pack will pay reparations for the murdered patrol wolves and will respect our borders from this day forward. Any violation will be met with the full force of both Silvercrest and Ashwood Packs united." Mordane shifted back to human form, his hand pressed to the wounds on his throat, his eyes filled with hatred but also grudging respect. "The Blackwater Pack accepts these terms," he ground out, because he had no choice. A defeated alpha who refused to honor the challenge results would be killed by his own pack for bringing shame upon them. As the Blackwater wolves retreated, their alpha limping and diminished, the Silvercrest Pack erupted into celebration. They'd won. Not just won, but won in a way that would echo through every pack in the Northern Territories. Luna Alara wasn't just a blessed choice of the moon goddess, she was a warrior, a true alpha in her own right, worthy of the crown she wore. 6 months later, on the first warm day of spring, Alara stood in a meadow filled with wildflowers, wearing a dress of white and silver that seemed to capture the sunlight. The entire Silvercrest Pack had gathered, along with representatives from the Ashwood Pack and a dozen other allied packs, all come to witness the formal wedding ceremony between Alpha and Luna. Kael stood waiting for her at the center of the meadow, handsome in his ceremonial black, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked toward him. Elder Thorne stood ready to perform the ceremony, but it was the small group of children at the front of the crowd that made Alara's heart swell. Maya, now 10 years old and training to be a warrior, stood proudly holding a basket of flower petals. Beside her were 5 other young Omegas who Alara had taken under her wing, all of them beaming with joy. The ceremony was beautiful, full of ancient words and sacred vows. But what Alara would remember most was the moment Kael slipped a ring onto her finger. Simple, silver-etched, with wolves running beneath a full moon, and whispered, "My mate, my Luna, my wife, my everything, forever," Alara whispered back, and kissed him as the pack howled their approval to the sky. The celebration lasted 3 days, but on the 4th morning, Alara woke with Kael's hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach, and she knew. She could feel it through the bond, could sense the tiny spark of new life that had taken root. "Kael," she murmured, and he was instantly awake, his eyes finding hers in the dim morning light. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I'm pregnant," Alara said, and watched his expression transform from concern to wonder to pure joy in the space of a heartbeat. "A pup," he breathed, his hand spreading wider across her stomach as if he could feel their child already. "We're going to have a pup." "Are you happy?" Alara asked, though she could feel his emotions singing through the bond. "Happy?" Kael laughed, the sound rich and full. "Alara, I'm beyond happy. I'm complete." He pulled her close, careful despite his excitement, and pressed a kiss to her forehead, her nose, her lips. "You've given me everything. A true mate bond, a strong Luna, victory over our enemies, and now a child. How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Alara corrected, snuggling into his warmth. "The moon goddess knew what she was doing when she made us for each other." 9 months later, on a night when the full moon hung heavy and bright in the sky, Alara gave birth to twin girls, strong, healthy pups with their father's gray eyes and their mother's auburn hair. They named them Lyra and Arya, and the entire pack celebrated for a week, joy and hope radiating from every corner of Silvercrest territory. As Alara sat in the nursery that first night, holding her daughters while Kael dozed in the chair beside her, exhausted from pacing anxiously during the labor, she thought back to that day in the ceremonial hall when she'd knelt in silver shackles, believing her life was over. She'd been so certain then that she was nothing, that she would never be anything more than a servant hiding in the shadows. But the moon goddess had seen something in her that she hadn't seen in herself. Strength, courage, power, the capacity for love that could transform not just herself, but an entire pack. Lyra yawned in her arms, and Arya made a small sound in her sleep, and Alara felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it was almost painful. These were her daughters, her family, her pack, her home. She was Alara Thornwood now, Luna of the Silvercrest pack, warrior and mother and mate to the Alpha who loved her more than life itself. And as she looked down at the 2 perfect lives she and Kael had created together, she knew that every moment of pain, every fear, every sacrifice had been worth it to arrive at this moment, this perfect, beautiful, blessed moment of forever. Did you like the story? Do you want a part 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, tell us which state you're watching from so I can give you a shout out in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay updated on our next uploads. Thanks for watching.